Hi everybody, it's Dalton. Welcome to DRW Bass Fishing, and I wanted to put together a video today. I wanted to go out in the shop and do it, but it's just so hot outside right now I decided to do it inside the house. I want to talk about having a starting lineup, and what I mean by that is have a plan when you get ready to go bass fishing. There's been a number of times that I've gone to a lake, and even guys, whether they're fishing from the shore or on a boat, when they pull up to the lake, they're starting to rig up baits. Okay, I like to have stuff ready before I even get to the lake. Now I'm getting ready to switch lakes. I've been fishing a big reservoir, a lot of open water. I've been able to use a lot of, hooks like this, exposed hooks on little swim baits, Ned rigs, things like that. But the lake I'm getting ready to go to, is completely different. It's a small lake in Northern California. It's about 70 acres. You can only go maybe 5 miles an hour on it tops. They have a speed limit on that lake. And most of the day I'm going to be using my trolling motor anyway. But this lake has a lot of things that are really good for largemouth bass fishing. It has reeds where they stick up out of the water, and what these bass do is they tuck up against those reeds. They'll get inside them or just outside of them. So it's a good place to fish for bass, fishing along those reeds. Another thing it has a lot of wood in the water. It has trees that are in the water, or dead trees, branches. It has, say, a walkway bridge. It has a number of areas where bass tend to hang out, particularly the largemouth bass, and this is a largemouth lake. And then, of course, it has topwater vegetation. These are areas where bass will get underneath that vegetation. There's a lot of shade there. There's ambush points for them to ambush their prey. So when I'm getting ready to switch lakes, and it doesn't matter if I'm switching lakes or not, I always want to have a starting lineup. I always do something before I go fishing, and that's tie at least 5 baits on 5 different rods. Now, if you don't have 5 rods, that's fine. If you got 2, then use 2. If you have 1, then make sure you have a little box where you can quickly switch baits out. Today I want to talk about my starting lineup going to this lake, which is probably, I'm going to try to get out there this week, but it may not be until the weekend. But my starting lineup is really simple. I've got 3 bait casters and 2 spinning rods. On my bait casters, one of the things that I have tied on as far as this bait caster, it's called a Repala DT10. Now, there is a lot of vegetation at this lake, but right outside the vegetation there's some deeper areas where the water breaks off deep. This is a really good bait to throw out in front of those reeds, out in front of those grass lines, in order to try to catch fish. Another thing I'm using is basically just a swim bait. Let me show you kind of how I got this rigged up. This is one of my favorite swim baits. This is called a Pulse Swimbait. It's 4.5 inches. And I Texas rigged this swim bait because I know I'm going to be running this bait through cover. I use a little bobber stopper right here. I've got an 1/8 ounce weight, and that way the weight and the hook won't separate. And I'm really throwing this right in that cover, in the grassy areas. Anywhere where there's cover, I'm throwing this little swim bait. And this is basically a bluegill color, and they've got a lot of bluegill out there, and that's a good place to start, is a bluegill color. Let me see if I can get this mess straightened out. You can go hang over there. All right. Another thing that is really good for this lake is simply a topwater frog. Okay, now this is more of a traditional hollow body frog, and this is something that works really good over that floating vegetation, or that vegetation that's on the surface we talked about. This thing will literally work its way across. But I also have another type frog that I like using, and it's just called a prop frog. In fact, I think this company is I got this thing all tangled up, so hang on a second. I think this company is called Lunkerhunt, and it has this little frog with these little propelling feet. This is really good out in front of those reeds, out in front of any type of wood, or over the top of submerged wood or submerged grass. If you've never fished a buzzbait, I would use this a lot like you're fishing a buzzbait, right over grass, all that kind of stuff. So what I've done here is I've just kind of given myself a chance that when I get on the lake, I'm going to be ready. Now on my spinning rods, I'm going to throw definitely a drop shot. Remember, the drop shot is just simply a hook above a weight. And the baits that I like to throw a lot on a drop shot are called Robo Worms. These Robo Worms are just outstanding for drop shotting. They have a lot of salt on them. They have a lot of they're very loose. They wiggle a lot, I guess, for lack of a better term. And I love to throw these things on a drop shot. This color is Aaron's Magic. This other color right here is called, got another one here that's really good, Margarita Mutilator. So I definitely am going to be drop shotting these Robo Worms. Now, the bait that I know without a doubt that I'm going to be throwing is going to be the Senko. These are 5-inch soft stick baits. Gary Yamamoto is the one who came out with, I believe, the first ones. And from my understanding, the green pumpkin Senko is the #1 bass fishing lure of all time. So it works really well. Now I'm working in, I'm fishing in cover. I've got to get through some grass edges, whatever kind of weeds are in there. There's a lot of weeds in this lake. And I'm kind of getting back to my comfort zone, which is that largemouth bass fishing in heavy cover. So what I'm going to do with this particular outfit is I'm going to use a spinning rod. I like to throw it on 10-pound braid. I use just straight braided line. And I did a video not long ago on how I use this Spike It braided line marker. I take about 2 feet of that braid and I color it black. For some reason, it just doesn't show up well for the fish. They don't see it that well. And when you're throwing in and around cover, they're basically not going to see it at all. So what I'm going to do is something called a Texas rig. I don't know if you're familiar with it. I love the Texas rig. I've got a big hook to show you here. This is that 5-inch bait. And all I do basically is come into the head of that bait like this. And I do that. Then I just turn the hook, and there's a little shoulder there, okay? And that bait will sit on that shoulder so it doesn't easily come off. Then I just take the bottom of the hook and I mark it with my finger, bend this thing forward, stick the hook through the bait, and that is a Texas rig worm. Now what you want to do is do what is called texposing. You want to take the tip of that little hook and you want to cover it or skin hook it with that bait. And what I run this on is a 1/16 ounce bullet weight, and I also put the bobber stopper or the peg because I'm throwing this in cover but also around cover. Okay, so I want this thing to work through really, really well, and that bait is perfectly straight, and all you do is just drag it along. Again, probably the #1 bait for catching bass, just the simple Senko. So I wanted to just do a short video to let you know how I prepare to go to a lake. If it's the same lake I'm fishing over and over again, or if I'm switching lakes like I'm doing right now, there's just some things I do. One of the things I do is I check the weather. I want to know what kind of wind am I going to be dealing with. You know, I may switch from this DT10 to a spinnerbait if the wind kicks up. I want to know what are going to be the conditions. Are there going to be clouds? Is it going to be bright sunny day? You know, what's the temperature? And when I get there, what's the water temperature? What kind of depths am I looking at? I know this particular little lake is only about 20 to 27 feet deep, so it's a relatively shallow lake. I don't think I mentioned the name. It's a lake in Watsonville, California called Pinto Lake. It's been around a long time. They claim on their site it's been around for 10,000 years. I don't know how they determine that. But I know one guy told me that when he looked it up, it's the second oldest natural lake in California next to Clear Lake. I have no idea. I haven't confirmed any of this, but I can tell you right now this lake's been around since I was a kid. There are huge bass in this lake. Unfortunately, I have not got anything over 3, 4, 5 pounds out of this lake, but there are a lot of double-digit bass. They get way back in the cover, and they're really hard to get to. All you can do is when you go out to this lake and fish, you only hope that they get a little more on the outside edges of that cover so you can get one. There is one guy, however, that caught 5 10-pounders in a year. at that lake. So it definitely has plenty of big bass. I'm going to this lake for a couple of reasons. One, I love largemouth bass. It's what I was raised up doing. I like to fish that cover. The bass are hard to find, but I love to fish that cover. The other thing is that it's getting really hot right now. Some of the southern lakes are just really hot, gets super duper uncomfortable out there, to where this little lake I'm going to is next to the coast, so it's 70 to 80 degree weather. It's a little more comfortable to fish, and I can actually go out there and spend a whole day fishing without the sun beating me down. So I'm looking forward to that, getting back out to this lake. I haven't been out there since the winter. It's going to be a lot of fun. I hope this video helps. Always have a plan before you go fishing. Have a starting lineup. Check your weather. Learn as much about the lake as you can, and just be as prepared as you can. Hopefully this helps. Thank you for tuning in. I'll talk to you soon.